Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabar.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Rufai Oseni.
Morning, sir.
Yes, let's start the review with this day. Nigeria's newspaper of record. The lead story, rising fiscal headwinds. IMF harps on improved domestic revenue mobilization. Reiterates need to end petrol subsidy. National Assembly may amend Finance Act to address 11.03 trillion 2023 budget deficit. Senators reveal. Of course, the International Monetary Fund has called on Nigeria's policymakers to develop measures to drive domestic revenue mobilization in order to reduce fiscal vulnerabilities and create policy space. Well, the IMF wading in there on Nigeria's fiscal situation. Now, the issue of petroleum subsidy still very much the front burner, but clearly for this administration, petroleum subsidy is going to stay, and that's what they have planned for 2023 until May 29, when President Buhari leaves the scene as president and a new president comes on board. Then the action to remove, I don't want to say the debate will begin then, no, because we expect the presidential candidates to discuss, tell Nigerians what they will do about the humongous amount we're spending right now to subsidize petroleum products, a lot of which, of course, go through the border to neighboring countries, and those smuggling these petrol products make a kill. Now, of course, the 2023 budget. Tomorrow, the National Assembly will resume sitting, and they're planning to tinker with the 2023 Finance Act to address the 11.03 trillion budget deficit, which in itself looks very worrisome. How to fill that hole? Borrowing, borrowing, and borrowing. From where? You ask. Of course, the CBN has been doing a lot of borrowing to the federal government, and many have said that in itself is a huge problem. Now, if we look at the Vanguard newspaper, also a business story. Businesses heading for total collapse. NECA raises alarm. NECA, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, says over 50 taxes weighing businesses down, warns against further borrowing, calls for harmonized tax system, economy facing many vulnerabilities. Mother Yusuf, let there be tax harmony, says FIROS. Of course, multiple taxation, one of the bane of the Nigerian economy. Businesses facing all kinds of taxes, both from the federal government and state government. Can we harmonize these taxes? And that is what businesses are asking for. Now, another story just below the graph. The front page of the Vanguard newspaper, campaign council, PDP's move puts APC under pressure. Yes, the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, announced its campaign council last week. But the APC had already put its own in place, perhaps still tinkering with that campaign council of the APC, because according to reports in the newspapers, Tinubu has just appointed Governor Yahaya Bello as the youth coordinator of his campaign council. So a lot of tinkering here and there, but the campaigns will kick off in a matter of days. Now, the Guardian newspaper, last mile infrastructure stores $3 billion submarine cable investment despite over 50 terabyte bandwidth capacity. varsities, airports, hospitals yet to connect. Infracos reluctant to move to site despite NCC directive. Lack of counterpart funding will stall service expansion, says experts.
Well, Emmanuel.
Yes, Ruben.
Emmanuel Efeni, you have to hold on. We have to go back to London.
Okay.
Where Judita is reporting live on the Queen's last farewell. More dignitaries from around the world have arrived in the United Kingdom to sign the official book of condolences for Britain's Queen Elizabeth II. Many of them took the opportunity to pay homage to the late monarch and the role she played in 70 years of global affairs. We're now being joined again by our Rise correspondent, Judita Da Silva, in Hyde Park, London, for updates on the funeral service activities. Hi, Judita. Well, we're back to you. Any updates? What's the latest? How is the event shaping out?
Hello, Ruben. We've kind of relocated to kind of give you a look onto the backdrop, which is one of the main parks where you can see people there, if you can, building up behind. The crowds have already begun to swell. And we're hearing a lot of cheers, a lot of shouting, a lot of messages also by the tannoy for security, kind of regulating the crowds that have already begun to build up. You're now seeing everybody moving into position. These are probably going to be the positions they will hold throughout the day. That is the horse guards, the people on foot, the patrol officers, the security, all the people, the shepherds, the stewards. Everyone's kind of regulated into position. I've seen a steady stream of men in full regalia, which will be all the different regiments of the army, the navy, retired veterans of the armed forces who are staying in local hotels who've come in full dress gear because they know that this is an important moment, whether they are active service or retired. So it's quite a sight to behold, and especially being at this vantage point, you get to see the entire food chain of people from the general public right up to everyone involved in the actual procession, and people who have a direct connection either in service of the Queen or knowing the family or the extended family socially. So it's quite remarkable how over the course of just a couple of hours, things have completely changed yet again.
All right. So, Judita, have you been able to talk to anybody, if we can get like a real life actuality of what's been the feel like in and around there, and how's all of this panning out?
I've had a couple of chats with people, and what they've kind of said is that it's almost a spectrum of emotions. Yesterday, from the minute silence, it was quite reserved, quite emotional, kind of on a knife's edge, because it put in perspective what is coming to a close, but there still was that fever-pitched sense of anticipation for what's going to happen today. Now we have a lot of excitement. And what I've said, like some people have said, is that they're just so happy to be here, but they already know that once it begins, especially that funeral service that's happening at Westminster Abbey, their emotions will shift again. And the moment when they see the carriage pass by here, wherever they're standing along the procession, because the procession will go from Westminster Abbey, down Horse Guards Parade, down the Mall, passing Buckingham Palace. It will come to us here at Wellington Arch, and then it'll be transferred from the State Gun carriage into the Royal Hearse. That will be another kind of emotion, because now the Brits want to kind of be buoyant in giving a victorious send-off, but they realize it's the end of an incredible 7-decade era. So they're already kind of girding their loins and girding themselves, knowing that it's going to be a very emotional experience that's going to take them through an assortment of feelings as it unfolds.
Well, is it possible for you to, talk to one or two persons live, where you are, or that would not be a convenient thing to do for us to hear directly from ordinary people who are part of this special occasion?
We actually tried to do that. We went out to get a position to actually get these interviews live while we were talking to you. But then what had happened is in the last hour and a half, the level of security has gone up a notch. And we were told that they had a changing of the guard of the Metropolitan Police around our location. And they told us that if we move in any direction, you can't move back. So we wouldn't be able to get back to this crucial point that we have, which will be important when they have the funeral procession. So we had to make an executive decision as to what would be best to do. So we got this vantage point for us, you to see the general vibe of the people behind. But should we leave, we might not be able to get back to you with the same kind of visuals that we have now. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that. But we did speak to some people and get their sentiments to share with you, which I have done.
All right, because all of this is well curated, can you just tell me the sentiment behind, the carriage going through the Wellington Arch? We all know the Duke Wellington and all of that, the historical antecedents. Is that deliberate, to show that sense of triumphalism?
Yes, it is indeed, because what they've done, what has been organized is every key location for the life of Queen Elizabeth is being incorporated into these processions. Westminster Abbey is where she was married, Westminster Abbey is where she was crowned, and Westminster Abbey is where she's going to have her funeral. From there, it's going to pass by Buckingham Palace, and having it drawn on foot by 142 naval officers is again respect to all the armed forces. And what we've done, like when you speak to them, one of whom I spoke to last night, he said that we swear an oath in the name of the Queen. As an active serviceman, he swore his oath to the Queen. He will swear again to the King Charles III. And so part of this is very important to them. So while it might be all pomp and parade to us, to them, it's a job, it's a duty, that they hold very, very dear, because it's what their entire life and their career is about, service of this monarch. And so having that being done with all this regalia is truly important. And to know that her final resting place will be the King Edward VI Memorial Chapel in St. George, which is part of St. George's Chapel. The body of King Prince Philip will then be moved from the royal vault to join Queen Elizabeth in that burial place. So you have her with the man she loved throughout her reign, being buried side by side in a memorial chapel named after her father. And it's a truly beautiful story, one we've only seen the likes of with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, that are buried together in a mausoleum she built for him on the grounds of Frogmore Cottage. So poignancy and history and legacy and provenance are sutured into every layer of the organization of this truly momentous event.
Okay. From what you have seen so far, could you talk to us about color, about symbolism? Even as we sit here in the studio, someone just sent me a WhatsApp message saying that, he just saw something about Alawekun. That's a Yoruba phrase, some festival. And he said he saw a symbol like that in the procession, and that it reminded him of those days in Nigeria when they used to have Empire Day. So I assume that maybe there's some symbolism from the Commonwealth infused into this ceremony. But what have you seen so far?
That is absolutely correct, because we know that the royal colors, purple and gold and red, have been out throughout the armed forces with the actual royal standard that is draped over the coffin. But as we saw yesterday at the state's reception at Buckingham Palace, a lot of the representatives of the Commonwealth have worn colors, be it from the flags, being from the Commonwealth standards, into their costume. In the messages they've written in the commemorative book at Lancaster House, they've mentioned how important it was to them. There's even been a story that has been circulating in the press today, which is about the oldest living surviving member of the Gurkha regiment, who's 88 years old, who wanted to come but was not giving medical clearance to fly. He is the only oldest living member of the Royal Cross, which was given to him by Queen Elizabeth. And he talked about, he was wearing his full regalia from his house. They took the book to Nepal for him to sign in person and brought it back to Lancaster House. And he was just talking about all the regalia. He looked after her security detail when she came to Nepal. He served as a Gurkha. And all of these things show that when it comes to color and texture, every member of the Commonwealth is very aware of what it signifies, and that now is the time to represent that, because she swore an oath to all of them that it was one of the most important duties she had and she wouldn't let them down, and she never did. And all of them have echoed that sentiment, and that's why they hold her in such high respect.
All right, still talking about sentiment. I know one of the most coveted materials from the funeral will be that order of event pamphlet that I'm seeing in the hands of some world leaders. Maybe you can get a hand on it. Probably maybe when I come to England, I could get a copy from you myself. But I want to talk around. Yes, I will get a copy of that to keep us momentous. I want to get a sense of the event itself, because what I've always looked for in funerals like this are the hymns, the curation of the readings, the hymns, what hymns are we expecting? I also understand that this is going to be largely taken over by the Church of England. Can you tell me a little bit into some of the clergy that will be, at this event and saying prayers and the likes and the hymns and, the what makes the event itself, can I use the word, the sense of spiritualism, that heralds the event in all this somberness?
Absolutely. So as far as presiding over it, you have the Very Reverend David Hoyle, who's the Dean of Westminster, as well as the Archbishop of Canterbury, who will also be presiding over the Westminster part. Then the Dean of Windsor will preside over the service over at Windsor Castle, in the chapel, the St. George's Chapel. And as far as the hymns, we know that the Archbishop of York had said that the Queen was very into scripture. She knew her hymns. She knew the Bible very well. And she could actually just have conversations about scripture that really impressed him. And they're going to be having The Lord is My Shepherd, Psalm 23, sung, which was her favorite and also played at her wedding to Prince Philip. Then we know that after they have the minute silence and the final, her Queen's Piper plays that final tune, it will be something significant to Scotland, which is Sleep, Dearie, Sleep. That will be the final dirge that will be played before we then say the final goodbye to the coffin and play on. So all of those hymns, which was great for you to point out, have been well chosen, well curated, and very significant to the life of the late monarch herself.
Well, talking about memorabilia, there is a story out there that eBay has objected to the sale of wristbands during the Queen's lying in state. What is that all about? Because eBay is coming up with rules that you can't be selling memorabilia from events, that you attended free. But there have been bids up to about £70,000, we're told, for wristband. And Rufai here wants to make a bid, I guess, for a program of events.
Yes.
It kind of... It speaks to what the royal family represents, because the royal family is an institution that is guarded by the opinion of the people, the sentiment of the people. We talked earlier about not mentioning the price tag of this funeral procession because it's from the taxpayer's purse, but also the royal coffers, because these are all things that are meant to be driven by public sentiment and goodwill, as opposed to financial gain. For instance, the exclusive documentary we had about the Queen, which we had a Rice Play had in Nigeria, that was curated by Buckingham Palace in conjunction with the BBC, and select people were chosen around the world to have it because they said it's not for financial gain, it's for paying tribute and respect. So that is why that eBay clamped down so quickly, because you cannot afford to fall out of favor with this institution at this very significant time. They do not want to be seen as profiteers from the death of one of the most treasured and respected global monarchs from ever in history, and definitely certainly around the world, as we've seen echoed from people like Justin Trudeau, President Joe Biden, and so many others who said she is unlike any other, and the world is lucky to have had her, which I'm echoing, which is a quote from President Joe Biden of America.
Right, Judith, I'm still very serious on that order of events pamphlet. I hear the hymns going on. Please, if you lay your hands on it, just get 2 copies. I'll get 1. Thank you so much. I'd like to talk about things like seating arrangements in the hall, because this is high-stakes event. Is it based on some sentiments or consension and all of that as we wrap up? It's
kind of been curated. They haven't given the press a lot of insight into that, but we know that obviously there are certain tensions that go beyond this event. At the end, you're bringing together a lot of world leaders where tensions lie. When you think of countries like India, countries like China, some countries in Europe, there are tensions there. So they have carefully organized who goes where. But it's kind of a universal understanding that this is something more important than politics. It's above politics. It's about the people. It's about history. So you come here with a sense of respect. Where you sit is where you stay, and everything is put to the side for this day at least. Afterwards, it's business as usual. So, but there is an awareness of there are certain countries that probably should not sit next to each other. Because, for instance, we know that the new Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, actually hosted a special audience with the First Lady of Ukraine yesterday. So everyone's aware of what's going on in the world beyond. For instance, the Japan typhoon, you mentioned that Emperor Naruhito is here, but he's very mindful of what his people are going through. So there's a lot going on beyond, but right now the focus is on this, and everyone's moving in the same direction collaboratively.
Looks like, world leaders are already at the event. We'll be right back to you later. Thank you.
You can just see there some former British Prime Minister coming in. John Mayo, I could see him there in the pictures before. We had Gordon Brown, everybody filing in there to the church, I think he caught my eye while Juditha was speaking, President Joe Biden of America, and other top dignitaries around the world, just filing in there, getting themselves seated and ready for this event. And I also saw that, what would be that famous pamphlet, that I talked about. I saw it in the hands of one of those people, and those are top dignitaries getting there. You can still see that. I think the last time David Cameron caught my eye, people still finding that's Liz Truss and husband, I guess that's the incumbent British Prime Minister. In fact, that just, met the Queen and kissed the hands of the Queen a couple of days ago before the Queen passed. So you can see her just being welcomed in there by top executives of the Church of England. They're pointing them to their seats.